Good morning. This is going to be the fourth in a series of quick-fire videos that I have done on the Iranian and U.S. conflict. I did my first one back in mid-March. I'm sitting here on Monday. I think today is April. I think today is July the 28th. So, boy, much has changed from then till now. But I can tell you that as I was getting ready to prepare to do this video, I was going to do this morning, I started it on Friday evening. And on Friday evening, we were looking at a forecast that doesn't look as good as it does now. So that's how quickly these things change, and I'll get into that and talk into that. But we had a pretty big movement over the weekend where we're back to kind of a lesser. The tensions have lowered, the temperatures have lowered. We're not bombing, they're not shooting missiles at things, so we're back to kind of trying to get this thing settled again. There is some movement along those lines. So, prayers that we can get this thing finished. But what I want to let everybody know, the reason why these things are being taken into account is that I know that everybody out there has got to be getting a little fatigued of watching the headlines in the news every day about what's going on, the back and forth, the ebb and flow. So we get war fatigue after a while. We just want our lives to go back to normal. We want prices at the gas pump to go down, so we obviously need oil prices to go down. And oh yeah, why are we in this conflict? We start, we kind of begin to forget that. But again, what I want everyone to know here is that we are still engaged in this pain, looking at this on a regular basis. But basically what I will let everyone know is that your portfolios, the portfolios that we have put together for our clients that are out there, we stress protection and participation at all costs. Again, Warren Buffett's 2 rules of investing. Rule 1, never lose money. Rule 2, never forget rule number 1. Now that's not possible to do in its truest sense, but again, that is a foundational principle that we follow. So, and that is exactly what happened, and I'll go through and explain that as we go through. But as I go through this video, if you like what you hear here and would like and think that other folks that are out there might benefit from listening to a video like this and the series that I've done, then please, somewhere down below there is a like and subscribe button that will help push our viewership and increase our footprint. So doing that would be much appreciated if you do like it and you would like to subscribe to the B&H Wealth Strategies channel on YouTube. Thank you for doing that in advance. So again, portfolios have held up well. First in a series of this video was done in March 15, and that was just a little over 2 weeks after the war had started. And as wars always, as they start, there's the chaos and the fog of war. Markets don't like that. They began to react. I'm talking about the stock market right now. So, and globally around the world, our markets and global markets, fell sharply in the first couple of weeks. But the thing that we saw is that the price of oil jumped, where we began and left February, moving into March as the war began. Oil prices were below $70 a barrel, but in that $65-$70 range, right there. And obviously it spiked by the time I made that first video. And then we saw oil prices in March, as I was cutting this video, move and touch as high as $120 at times, 118 to, I'm not sure that we ever got above 120, but we were certainly bouncing near that ceiling of 120. And that immediately began, as that occurred, energy prices rise, then the gas pump prices rise, your electric bill goes up, and grocery bills increase as well as many, many other things, because oil, energy is what moves the needle. It's what moves our the things that we consume on a daily basis. It's how we get groceries on the shelf. It's how we get car parts to car dealerships. It's how we get everything, is moved on some type of vehicle or ship or train that requires energy to run. So it just is just the way the world works. And so it is estimated that about 60% of the inflation numbers that we'll see, calculated and posted on a monthly basis, 60% of that comes from energy prices, from the price of oil. So that's literally how much it moves the needle right there. And keep in mind that when we did leave the month of February, as the war began, inflation was running at about 2.8% on an annual basis. So we were below the 3%, mark at that point in time. But my message in March was, portfolios are built to endure this. Let's see how this war plays out. The administration was very optimistic in the messaging coming from the administration was that this was a 6 to 8 week situation, hopefully, and we would get this thing resolved. And obviously we can, with hindsight now, we know that it wasn't anywhere near accurate right there. What I suggested at that point is let's see how this thing plays out, and again, that the portfolios are built for just this type of situation, right? The protection participation strategy that includes. So then we held tight. That was the suggestion, let the portfolios do their work. So then I didn't do another video until into May. And so what we, look back to that, what we saw is that, in fact, what I had suggested would be the case, that we let the portfolios do their work. The markets would begin to absorb the war, and that we would see if we couldn't get moving towards some type of resolution. Not necessarily that we were moving to resolution. I don't know if that ceasefire that held off and on for a while had already been signed. I have to check my data points on that, so you can fact check me on that, but I'm not sure if we were theoretically in a ceasefire, but there was never truly a ceasefire. Bullets and bombs were always kind of being exchanged. There was just less of them happening during the ceasefire. But what we did see is the market did recover nicely from May 15th, that I would drop the video until the next recording here in the early part of May. That was video number 2. And so they had bounced nicely off of their lows. The 15th, when I dropped it, the video wasn't the low. We actually dropped, the low point would have been around March the 30th. And so, but again, it moved nicely. We didn't drop anywhere near as much as the market, but we recovered, and our portfolios were nicely in positive territory as we were dropping this video in May, because again, we let the portfolios do their work. What I suggested in May in the video was that I thought this thing was going to be over, and it was going to start really looking like and feeling like it was over around June the 14th. That time period, that mid-June, not June the 14th specifically, but mid-June. The reason why I say June 14th, because I think the number of reasons why I felt like we were moving towards that, some peace, if you will, or at least beginning to discuss the terms of peace and the ending of the war would happen at that point in time, was because I said June 14th, that's Trump's birthday. Trump has a flair, a panache for, a flair for the dramatic, and obviously his birthday on the 14th, getting, a deal done with the Iranians, what a great birthday present that he can give himself and he can give the world, and the U.S., and us here in the U.S. specifically. Also, it was right at the time when the World Cup was was coming on shore, if you will, into the U.S. So the World Cup that ended on July 19th, with Spain winning the World Cup, was coming to the, coming on our shores, and we want to put our best foot forward when those types of things are going on. And then also, we were 2.5 weeks in front of the July 4th celebration of our 250th birthday. So those three things just suggested to me that with everything that we don't see going on behind the scenes, but as you can kind of hear coming out of the administration, as they felt like they could get this thing done around that time frame. And so that's, I I felt like that was the case. And then so we fast forward into June, markets continue to kind of stabilize. Oil prices, they've bounced, continue to come around. But on the weekend of July 14th, July 15th, there was that memorandum of understanding that was signed. It wasn't because I've got a crystal ball and could see that. It's just that just made sense when you looked at the three factors that I talked about. So again, the key is we stayed and let our portfolios do the work. The market was doing well. We got this memorandum of understanding, and so all of a sudden the market's doing well. Oil prices begin to come down very dramatically, moving from north of $100 a barrel and $90 a barrel. Got as low post the moving around that 1st of July into June, July 4th time period, moving down into the $72 range. So we were close to where we were pre-war. At the end of February, first couple of days of March, oil prices were between $65 and $70 a barrel. We touched on 72, I think, at the low point, somewhere in that neighborhood, in this kind of feel-good period of the memorandum of understanding around moving from that date into the July 4th week and weekend. There was optimism, right? It looked really, really, really good and strong. We saw gas prices come down very quickly. And so, there was that optimism, that celebration. Okay, could this thing hold? Obviously, we began to see tensions begin to flare again shortly after July 4th, in this tit-for-tat back and forth. The Iranians would hit a ship in the Straits of Hormuz. We would retaliate with some type of either missile launch or, bomb. If we could find one of their missile manufacturing plants, we would find one of those to drop a bomb on. Also, you've got tensions going on still within Lebanon between Hezbollah and the Israelis. So that's, the Iranians are claiming that that's a reason why they can attack, because we're not holding to our end of the ceasefire, where they're not holding to theirs because they're firing on ships in the Straits of Hormuz, this back and forth. So you have, and then we created a third kind of front in this war that is not talked about very much, but the Houthis, who control Yemen, which is in the Red Sea, and there is a narrow strait that must be passaged by many of our supply ships, oil ships, and the Saudis have a pipeline that runs into Yemen as well to pump oil, into the tanks there to move them around the globe. The Houthis began to attack those and began to control, trying to control the Red Sea and either stall, subordinate, traffic through there as much as they could, to reduce traffic through there. So you got three fronts that are going on. So all of a sudden we end June with the memorandum of understanding. We have the celebration of our 250th. It looks pretty bright and sunny by the end of last week. So for 2 weeks to 10 days that ended last Friday, it looked like this whole thing was falling apart. Oil prices back up over $100 a barrel. The market, kind of bouncing, around and feeling like that it's going, down in many cases. And I'm sure people were concerned about that, again, with this fatigue that takes place. And then as I was preparing for this video this morning, and was going to do it on Monday, but I was preparing on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, I was getting ready to paint a pretty gloomy picture, of which I just talked about right there. Oil prices up, 100 into the 90s, into the hundreds even. More tension in the Middle East, more, kind of choke points, if you will, over there, to create more disruption. So it looked like it was going to have a, kind of go, okay, here's the ebb and flow, here's the sunshine, here's the rain. Portfolios are still built to get through this. And so, but over the weekend, we went to another ceasefire. And with that, at least to ease the tensions that are over there, so we're back to the negotiating table. So we saw oil prices drop, from, the 90, excuse me, 90 some odd dollars a barrel on Friday to opening this morning in the $83 range. So 7 or 8% drop in oil prices overnight, or over the weekend rather. And the stock market futures pointing nicely higher this morning. So, we're kind of back in that what we call risk on trade. You'll hear me talk about headwinds and tailwinds. Well, there are a number of tailwinds, right? The tailwinds are corporate earnings are very strong, and the corporate earnings can hold up going forward, even if we see prices of oil up in the nearing the $100 a barrel range. It still looks at the corporate situation, the underlying, many of the underlying fundamentals in the U.S. economy are still very, very strong, despite all of this that's going on around the world. The headwinds are all of the tensions and the things and that was kind of the message on the 14th of June. That's what we looked like. The message this morning was going to be these headwinds that I talk about all the time, which are increased escalation, AI lays off people, but basically it increased an escalation in tensions and wars in the Middle East. And that's what we looked like on Friday as we closed. This morning, the sun is back out, and that's in talking less than, a little more than 48 hours. Here we are with some optimism again. Markets pointing up, oil prices pointing down. So, stay tuned, because this is for sure going to change. But again, I think what we look at is, look inside our portfolios. Are they doing their job? The protection participation, the answer is yes, they are. So for some perspective on this, just to kind of look back real bit, the U.S. stock market from March the 15th to Friday's close was up over 10%. The oil prices from we saw oil prices spike last week. The price of gasoline in the state of Tennessee, we were $3.71 roughly at the beginning of last week. We are this morning at about $3.71. Perhaps that's coming down. We'll see if oil prices can stick. On July the 1st, the oil price, or gasoline price rather, and I'm talking gasoline price now at the pump, in the state of Tennessee was around $3.40. Like I said, we're around $3.71 now, so certainly has been an increase. But if you want to look at it in a good way, the national average is around $4.20. So we're still 70 cents, I guess, less than that. So again, we count our blessings for that in the state of Tennessee. So again, my message to close will be that we are, that it's slow and steady, kind of boring in a portfolio, kind of is how you win championships. We're not flashy. We are boring. We are steady. We are consistent. That's what a protection participation strategy does, and it's worked all the way through this period from March until now, and it's done exactly those things to protect on the way down, to participate on the way up. We are solidly in positive territory from for the year, also from the March 15th video that I dropped, and from when the conflict began. So again, it's going to continue. It's going to ebb and flow. But again, I would equate it, to where we are. We like boring. The world around us may not be boring, because it certainly is not. It is chaotic. But we want to kind of have a boring, ride in our portfolio, that we just kind of keep climbing. We just kind of keep climbing, a little bit at a time. And if we've got to take a step back, which we certainly will, we don't take big steps back. We take small steps back. Therefore, we don't have to take undue risk, to take bigger steps and more dangerous paths to try to get back to where we were. So I think that's the key. I would equate it to the Spanish team that just won the World Cup in soccer. I don't know a lot about soccer, but I heard them compared to the San Antonio Spurs, teams that won championships. They were really, really good, but they were boring. And Spain's team was boring. They were the Argentinian team they beat in the finals that had Messi, on their team, one of the most, spectacular, most heralded soccer players of all time. I can't rank or know where he would fall, I just know that he is very highly regarded. So again, and they were flashier. And the French team, they were flashier. They, arguably they had more talent. They looked like they would be better. But the Spanish team played fundamental. They always played team, played team ball, if you will. That's the way it was described to me. So boring wins championships. That's the San Antonio Spurs when they had their run in the NBA. That's the New England Patriots when they were winning all their championships. They had very few flashy teams. Tom Brady was never flashy. And they had a bunch of no-names on their offense for years and years that people never really even heard of and can't even recall their names today. But they were the most successful team out there, as the Spurs were. Boring, protection, participation, do the boring things day in and day out and be consistent. That's how we climb the mountain. That's how we survive the storms. So again, I'm going to close and say that if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Call me, 423-247-1152. Email me at jeff@bhretire.com. That's jeff@bhretire.com. And remember, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe below. As always, keep the faith. God bless America.